Welcome to Design Signatures, a podcast by Fedrigoni, Masters of Paper and Creativity since 1888. Design Signatures is a series of conversations all about design, creativity, special paper, and beyond. I'm Ambra Fridegotto, Head of Marketing at Fedrigoni UK. On each episode, I'm joined by our long-term collaborators, Johnny Sevdos and Danny McNeil, co-founders of design studio TM.
In this series, we're joined by international designers
who are shaping the world of publishing.
We'll dive into their stories, how they got started, their thoughts on where the industry is now, and where they see it heading in the future.
Today we're talking to Lorenz Klingebiel, graphic designer and art director of Frieze Magazine, based in Berlin, Germany.
Hi, we're here today with Lorenz Klingebiel. And Lorenz, do you want to tell us a bit about your journey to how you became the art director of Frieze Magazine and how it all started?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. And it started with me getting into art school in Offenbach back in, I think, 2006. I was kind of surrounded by lots of people who were interested in arts and acting, and my siblings are like in a similar field. My brother's a musician, my sister is a film producer, and there was somewhat like a necessity to something that was missing was maybe design. So I started designing like some posters, and then I got into art school. And
we're designing things for your sister and your brother.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, the very first thing I did was a poster for a friend of my brother for their band, which then I would continue working with for, I think, almost like 10 years.
Oh, amazing.
So I think for me, graphic design was always something that needed a solution, but also an access to a world I wanted to be part of. At some point, I wanted to do an exchange. I wanted to get some experience, and I chose to go over to London, which was, the main reason, to be honest, for that was my relationship at the time. So I think you should always follow that if you can. And so that took me to London. It took me to Camberwell College and to Village Green Studio, which both were like, I think, big influences for me at the time. At Camberwell College, I met a lot of great designers, including Europa, who I would end up working with, including Fraser, who I would end up interning with, and got introduced to the city. And
were there any key projects that you did in your time at university, whether here in the UK or in Germany, that were in your portfolio that kind of got you through the door and people took notice of?
I think there's maybe two projects worth mentioning. One is the copy shop, which was very much like a university project. It was set up as a course, a unit by our professor at the time, Sascha Lobe, which some people here might know, very, very good typographer, type designer.
Since gone on to become a Pentagram partner, right?
Exactly. And I think now he just has left to do his own thing again. But he's definitely been around. But at the time, he just had actually joined HFG Offenbach to become professor for typography. And so it was very exciting. I just got back from London, and there was this sort of new class that was just set up. And it was about, I think, just copying as a form of, as an aesthetic, as a medium, as maybe also a time like the 80s when the photocopiers would become like widely available. And I partnered up with like a fellow student, Nicolas Kremershof, and we had this idea that of a copy shop. To break it down really quickly, like that, there would be a lot of things going in, and people would copy things, and then they would take them out into the world again. But that copy shop would see a lot of different things like documents, imagery, and it would actually be quite exciting to track that. So we set up our own copy shop. We got like a sort of old school and I don't know what the word is. It wasn't digital, but like an old school photocopier donated, and then did a few workshops, and it kind of got a bit of traction within the school, and we then organized this like a mini symposium in the Klingspor Type Museum, which is sort of adjacent to HFG Offenbach, which has quite actually a great collection of typography samples, specimens by like the likes of like Rudolf Koch, who drew Prisma or Kabel. So that's all there. So it's an amazing place to find things. But being an archive, it's not in a like super accessible. So we had this idea to invite like a group of designers from around Europe, including Europa, for example, and for them to spend like half a day in the archive to like pull things out, because that was sort of doable for a small group, and to then photocopy them on our copier, put them on a wall, and then to give like a small like presentations in the evening about their work. And that was really great. And it kind of led to a book project.
It's quite a considerable undertaking as a project, like quite a...
Yeah. I guess for me, that was being a student, was like having that time and focus to do these things and just to like, that was our work in a way. But we were definitely excited about this. And then we made this quite big book. I think it was like 300 pages. Got a bit of funding from Klingspor to sort of ridiculously print it on laser printers, but that was sort of like the best, sort of closest aesthetic, but also realistic to produce it, linked to the copy aesthetics. And before it, we designed a new typeface called AG Copy Shop, based on Accidents Grotesque, sort of like a relatively simple sort of copying mechanism, but it kind of produced its own aesthetic, and which then went on to be used for maybe half a year. It was used in Groove magazine, which again for me was like quite a sort of influential magazine for electronic music culture in Germany at the time.
How did they discover it?
I knew someone who was working there, and I think we just had an exchange, and they saw it and they were like, oh, this would be perfect, for editorial use for some time.
Nice.
It's amazing that you managed to influence a magazine that you actually followed yourself. Like you had a little input in that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess that's just great when that happens. You kind of can get involved in what you really enjoy. For me, that was at the time, but still like music a lot, as much as the arts. And then I don't know, that I think that was a nice book that we made, and that kind of became part of my portfolio. And I remember that we only made a few, and because they were quite expensive to make, and it was quite a lot of work. And Fraser wanted one, and I was like, oh yeah, well, I have only a few left. But I was like, okay, fine, you can have one. And there was an exchange as well. But that was also, I don't know, I was happy for that to become part of his library. So that was a great project. There was another one that kind of, looking back at it, I mean, design wise, I mean, I think it was very much a student project, but it was the annual report. Like our school would do an annual report every year, and it would be like sort of like a great task to do for a small design team, for that to be done every year, because there was quite a good budget put behind it. Like it was like a proper publication, like over 200 pages, I think, around A4, and we had a link to local printers, so it meant we could experiment with paper choices. We did this like a dust jacket that was a poster. It was, I mean, when I look at it now, it's very heady. It was a very heady project. We actually went through the effort of like finding the exact GPS codes for every single individual that worked at the university.
Oh my god!
Then there'd be a privacy problem if it was done now.
Secret Service. Yeah. Is that your other job?
And Europa gave me a job, my first job afterwards, and that was in 2012, I think, and no, 2012, maybe 13.
Yeah.
And I stayed with them, I think, for 1.5 years.
Had you been doing lots of books and publications at Europa and with Fraser? Like, had that been like a big part of that sort of 1.5 years?
Yeah. I mean, especially at Fraser's. I mean, the focus really was on print within the arts. I think you could kind of break it down to like invites, brochures, but also small publications I would kind of get involved in as a very fresh intern.
Yeah.
And similar with Europa, it was a big focus on. It wasn't just that, we did other projects as well, but there was a big focus on print publications. But I also got to say, I didn't have much experience at magazine design or at making really like bigger book publications, so I was quite green.
And it's quite a big commitment when you sort of move from a studio who's doing like a diverse range of work to a kind of like a Frieze magazine, a magazine that kind of it's one thing that you produce in-house effectively, which I think we get that question a lot with the sort of interns that we get in here, you know, when they move on to the next role, whether they should be looking at multidisciplinary studios that are kind of across lots of things, or focus down on those in-house roles. Was that a sort of consideration to you, or were you just like jumping at the chance because you sort of had done your sort of research into Frieze and felt that was a really good place for you?
Yeah, I think for me it was interesting to do something different. To become an in-house designer, I thought was also, you know, I guess at the time I was still relatively young. I'm not to say that I'm old now, maybe, but so I thought it was also good to to try that, because again, I think one great advantage that we have, I think, in the field of graphic design as designers is that we can virtually work in any field and in very very different roles. And I thought, trying an in-house position like that within a very exciting work environment like Frieze was offering as a company as a whole was something I should definitely try. I also, at the beginning, I thought, I can just try this for a year and then I could always go somewhere else, right? If it wouldn't work out for me.
Yeah.
And I also really enjoyed which is only something I realized, which again is something I can really recommend to people, especially when you have just worked in that studio environment solely before, to end up in a working environment like I did at the magazine, where you wouldn't be surrounded by other designers, but you would be. I mean, there's a team that I would have colleagues, I would have design peers as well, and obviously it's a very design adjacent sort of field, working in the arts at Frieze. But you would be sort of the expert, right? Like your job would be to bring, to break it down a lot, like words and images together. And there would be other people who would write those words, bring those words together with a lot of care, but then it would be your job to design them and to make that print publication happen. And that was also kind of like it was kind of gratifying, that you could, I don't know, you wouldn't be so much in your bubble of just, which is, I do very much enjoy talking about fonts and colors and I don't know, layouts and about design, but that it would more be like also like a craft, like a task, like something that needs to be done, obviously in a very careful way and in a way that people care about, but just to be part of a bigger team, I think was actually really, really great.
And so you've done your junior design roles, and then you've sort of arrived at Frieze Magazine, and you're sort of there, and you're working under the direction of other designers, the art directors. Could you just talk us through that? And I guess the evolution of your time there. You're still there now, right? You're still working as one of the projects you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly an evolution, I guess, or like a progress in many ways. I think when we started, we had a design that was quite sort of bright and open, and we would use loads of different typefaces, and it was a lot of fun. There was lots of there was more like stylistic devices that we would use. It was quite playful, I guess, but also still relatively clean, I guess. But within that world of publishing, maybe quite playful.
Could you just explain to the listener exactly what Frieze is? In a broader sense.
Yeah, done that. Yeah, so Frieze Magazine is a magazine on contemporary art and culture. It was started in 1991, so it's been around for quite a while. And the founders, Amanda Sharp and Matthew Slotover, they at some point, they also started doing art fairs. So that came a bit later. Started, I think, with the art fair in London, then New York was added, and so on. So now it's quite a big undertaking, I guess.
The magazine was before the fairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the magazine has been going strong, I think, since the very start. We produce 8 issues per year, and it's an international publication. We have our team is split over London, where the headquarters is, to New York and Berlin. But we have writers all around the world. We cover like arts on the whole globe. And we do other publications, sometimes linked to the fairs. But at the core, it's contemporary art that we sort of write, think, and report about as well.
During your time there, were you mostly working fully on Frieze, or did you have other freelance work that you were working on, or were you very much in the Frieze magazine?
No, when I started, it was pretty much like a full-time job almost. Which at the time was very it was great, because it just gave me a lot of time to do layouts and spend time on them, but also spend time with the people, with the editors, the bigger team of Frieze.
I guess that's the nice thing of working in-house versus in a studio. You get to pour so much time into one specific focus, which must be one of the biggest benefits of being in-house.
And you're very close to the team the whole time. You're like part of the team, right?
I was going to ask, how does the magazine respond to the art fair? Does the editorial content change specifically when a fair's about to start? Is it September time, or is it just consistent throughout the year?
I would say, the magazine itself is like relatively consistent. But there are, of course, in the calendar of the art world, there are certain moments that we then respond to. Like, for example, this year with the Venice Biennale, we did an issue that was focused totally on Venice. That was very exciting, because it meant we also produced this photo series with a great Italian photographer. His name is Eric Sciegante. I think it's very hard to pronounce his last name. Great photographer who's kind of born and brought up in Venice, and therefore had like great knowledge of the city. So we would respond to things that happen, of course. And when it comes to the fairs, I think it's there might be a bit of a focus on. We might do a profile on an artist that's based in London when the London fairs happen, and vice versa for New York. Yeah.
From a typography point of view, what would you say are the main ways of encouraging people to read a magazine or read any text?
I think it's like classic things, like those sort of things that you maybe sort of learn in school, like to stick to certain type sizes, to not make things too small, not too big, not too bold. I still think serif typefaces kind of work a little bit better for longer text. But it's also maybe in a bigger sort of, or on a broader level, it's just about not designing too much, not to put too many things on the pages, because really, we usually got great imagery, we've got exciting work that we're showing, and that's what you can look at. But then we've got the text, and that's where we really put our heart in, and so it's about like not doing too much, I think, to tell the readers.
Yeah.
You can't just flick through, like there is more in here. And so, maybe as a short answer, it's like, just to design as much as possible, but not more. And I think that's maybe something that generally for me is an approach, especially within the arts.
Yeah.
That, you really identify what the task is, and then you do that, but you really try to do that and not more. And with practical things, it's about typography, we were looking for a typeface that would do that for us, and at the time there was this one typeface that I had wanted to use for a while, called Rhymes by Jakub Zamek, Czech type designer, and we had been in touch before and it didn't work out. But then I think we just got in touch at the right time, because he was just about to publish it with MaxiType, which is a type foundry, Switzerland, that at the time was just being set up by Maximage, design studio, Switzerland, and the type was ready or almost ready. We did get quite a few versions, and I think it was perfect. And I still think it's perfect. It's for us. It's based on original drawings of Times New Roman, but it's Jakob's interpretation of it. But it's still it's very well produced. It has a lot of weights. It has different cuts. It has a text cut and a display cut, and it has that visual quality. And then that's something maybe this kind of essence that I think I always try to find in design projects that I see in Frieze, and that's sort of like somewhere between a certain visual coolness that I think that maybe is just something that we want to achieve generally in graphic design within the arts, but also a certain but also having one foot in academia. So like, we as in and writing and I think writing maybe as full stop. And so for me, it's a typeface that like does that. Like it's sort of cool, but it's also kind of dry. So it kind of tells you, please read me.
Just moving on, I guess, from the Frieze conversation, you are obviously now you work on lots of different freelance projects as well. You're working on books with artists, as well as other periodical type projects. Is there a different approach you're taking between the design of a magazine to the design of a book?
I guess with the magazine, when you're involved in it, or with any kind of project, I guess that's ongoing, a lot of, the playing field, right? The stakeholders, the people you're working with, the general undertaking. You also have designed a lot of things. You have styled your layouts, which is not to say that we wouldn't change them sometimes, but a lot of things are already decided. And with book design, I guess you have to find out all of these things. You have to find out the playing field. You have to find out who is involved, what do they want. Let's say it's within the world of arts. Like, is it a monograph? Is it one artist? Is that artist alive or they passed away? Is it a group show? What type of book do the clients want to do? Like, who will drive that? Is it curators? Is it editors? So there's a lot of things that you have to find out first.
I guess there's also that feeling that a book has more permanence, which isn't necessarily true, but there is a feeling to that.
I mean, I guess books are literally designed, right, to last longer. Like, the binding is usually much better for that purpose, that they're supposed to be around for longer. Magazines, ideally, and hopefully, for knocking on wood, they just continue, right? Like, and so if something maybe didn't go that well, or you saw something that you didn't like, then you change it or you improve it. And we constantly do that at Frieze as well, that we look at the columns that we're doing, are they working? Or from my side, from the sort of visual design side, we're looking at type details. Are they still working? Can we improve things? And you can subtly do that. But with a book, I guess you can't. And so there's, it's, I guess there are, I don't want to say that there is another level of care that goes into them, but I mean, there's more time that goes into a book, I guess you can say.
And when it comes to cover design, how would you say your process differs when you're looking at covers of books or magazines compared to record sleeves, for example?
I guess you could say it comes back to the question of, like, what needs to be done. What's the playing field? Like, if we would do like a publication on something very visual, then usually there's like great imagery, and it's more about choice, right? So, for example, recently, again with Dominic, we collaborated on this monograph for this artist, Daniel Cruz Chop, and with him, it was mostly about finding, he's a young painter from London, and it was mostly about finding that perfect work. And that was the work that we had to do. And then alongside with it, the treatment for the cover, which for that book we decided that actually, because Daniel has this really sort of this rough treatment, you could say, to painting, and we thought maybe he should just do the title himself. So we just asked him to do that, and then we kind of tweaked it a little bit, and that became the title of the book, Out of Chaos. So sometimes it's just so that's, I think, something that happens often within arts publishing. And then music, I guess it's almost the opposite, which is also great to have that as a counterpart in your practice, that what you are designing for is invisible. I mean, people aren't, but the music is. And yeah, and it's also, I think, just thinking about, okay, what would I like to do here? Like, it's because for once there isn't something that's set. So what should we choose? What should we produce? So it can be a field of like experimentation, or it can be just that moment where you finally get to use a photograph and a work, an image by someone you always wanted to work with, or something you've seen before, and you find that's the right point.
So can you share an example of a publication project that you feel is particularly interesting from a material, format, or production point of view?
Yeah, there's one that maybe at first glance doesn't look so exciting, because there's no crazy cutouts, or there's no crazy colors or treatments, but it's a catalog that we designed, and again, this was a collaboration with Dominic. You can see we do often work together on projects like that. It was a catalog for the Whitechapel Gallery in London, for the first retrospective on the work of the German artist in brackets photographer Thomas Ruf, back in 2017. And that was our second project that we had done for the Whitechapel Gallery. And it's super exciting because Thomas Ruf's been on my curriculum in art school, and I do really like his work. And the part of the project was going to his studio, meeting him, and discussing things with him. It was a very exciting process. And again, I think this is a good example, because for this one we did really have a dummy of that we got made of the format that we wanted to do, with the exact.
I've just noticed it's on symbol tatami as well. It's on a Fedrigoni paper.
yes, it is. Yeah.
Were other papers tried and shown to the client, or was there a decision around? I mean, what happened there?
I think tatami is a great paper that, in all honesty, we can't always afford in projects like that, but sometimes we can, and then we like to. So I think it's one of my favorites, because it does a lot of things for you. So it's coated, but it's not too white. It has that nice tone that also allows it to be used on sections where you have a lot of writing, because I think that that's, again, it comes back to this point, really designing things to invite people to read, and these super white papers that might be good for to be even more truer to reproducing art. They're just not so nice to read on. Tatami kind of does that both, and it has a bit of volume, which again means even if you maybe don't want to or can't afford to print 300 pages, you get a nice spine. So yeah, it's a great paper, and I think for sometimes, I guess you really want to use the paper to show differences in a catalog. So you want to use a different paper on for the essays, or for the back matter, or for different parts generally of the book. But sometimes I think it's also important to just use one thing throughout to really make this, I don't know, this one thing, this, and if, for me, for some reason, or for us, and for this Ruf catalog, it really makes sense to have that one gesture when it came to the material. And it was finished off with a see-through PVC dust jacket that was screen printed on the title, just Ruf, which again I think was our suggestion. So, and that again came with I think the power of a sample that we just had kind of made that in a wacky way on a laser printer.
At what point in your process do you start considering materials, formats, and production for a project? Are there just go-to materials that you prefer to use, papers you prefer to use, or is it defined earlier in the process, often I guess by the publisher. But what's your experience of that?
Again, it's a conversation. It's finding out that playing field of what needs to happen when, and what are the constraints. So sometimes you work with publishers and it's clear that they want to have a book that needs to have 220 pages, and it should be a certain size. And then I feel like, well, that's fine, and I don't need to worry about that anymore. And sometimes if more things are set, and then I guess you don't need to worry about it anymore. But I think I guess as early as possible, really, like you want to consider all these things, and I think that therefore sampling is so important, that you really get the materials that you want to work with, because again, they're going to be the arguments, I think, to win clients and partners over, to really show the difference in certain papers and treatments, and also formats. To have a dummy is so important, to show people this is how much it's going to weigh, this is how it's going to like feel in your hands, and so I think these things should happen very early on, because then people get excited, as they should, and then you're on your way. But often again, budgets play a big role, like cost is a factor, right, like on your decision making. So the sooner you know what you can do, what the budget will allow you, the better. But I don't know, there's one example where we really kind of, looking at the book now, it's a book that we've done for Vitra Design Museum. Again, it was a collaboration with Dominic, and it was for an exhibition called Garden Futures. And I think we really took like an analytic approach to it. We're like, okay, so what's the content here? It's about garden design. But there was going to be a lot of content in the book, a lot of writers. It wasn't like your classic catalog where you have an essay section, and then you have a big plate section with a lot of great images. So we needed to be like flexible, and we then looked at, okay, what's the best ratio, what's the best grid, what's the best dimensions, and we landed at this point where we knew, okay, we needed 2 text columns, but you also needed space for a column for captions, and that kind of really led to the format in the end. So,
and if I remember correctly, the end pages were different, right? You at the beginning they were yellow, and in the back they were green.
Yeah, I think it was like sort of orange hue and a green, these like subtle moments, I think is nice. It's a nice thing that you can do in book publishing. Again, differently to magazine design, where often the constraints are a bit higher because you need to be a bit more flexible. In book design, I really love to work with these subtle gestures, like a certain feel of a paper, or a certain color, a certain tone, a certain finish, maybe on a laminate, although no one likes laminates, but they're like very useful.
I love that we started with your career and when you started university, thinking that maybe you would become a photographer, and then we've closed off with a photography or project with a photographer, and you kind of went full circle. And it's nice that even if you weren't able to, or you changed career path, you're still able to work with people that you clearly have a passion connected with them. And I think that probably helps reflect in your work that you do for them, that you understand maybe their mindset or what they want to show. And that's quite a nice circle moment.
I think sharing an excitement, I think is definitely a powerful motivation and starting point of a project. After maybe a few years, there's also this certain experience maybe that you gain, and again, relationships that you build. But I don't know. I remember like the curator from the Paula Rego exhibition, Elena Grippa. Like she was so good at telling stories about these paintings, and you really just got excited about looking at these works that maybe in a different day you would just walk through a gallery and just look at it and be like, yeah, okay, that looks fine. Look, might be a good cover, but whatever, I don't, looks good. But so it's like, I feel really happy and lucky to be working in this sector, because it is something that like profoundly excites me, and I think it is something that I think is good to participate in and to push forward in this world that we live in.
what are your thoughts on AI and the design world and how those two are coming together / clashing?
I would say like a very cautious or maybe critical standpoint in regards of that we haven't really found a model to, I think, pay tribute to the fact that these powerful tools that are being built, like what are they based upon, and how do we compensate for that knowledge and work that went into those tools. So I think I would always be very, very, very cautious to use them. I think, it's always interesting to experiment with new technology, but before you really use them to a public output, when you make them part of your work, I would be very careful with, I think, I don't know, for now, for example, I do have an account with ChatGPT, and I do find it, it's a powerful tool when it comes to like looking up CSS commands in InDesign, and as a starting point to kind of research, knowledge-based research. But for anything else, I would just be very careful, and I think we're not at a point yet where we can just be at ease in any way whatsoever with the technology that we have available already.
And how do you, sort of closing up, how do you see your sort of design style and aesthetic, and how do you see that developing in the future? Where do you think you're headed? Is there any specific thing you want to be working on or want to do? Or
I don't know. I think maybe that's kind of slightly going off. I like the balance that I currently find in my practice. I think that's, it's great to be doing magazine design, editorial design, whilst doing book design and once so often music design, also sometimes poster design. But I do think also we don't live in a bubble, and I think we live in a world right now that's not developing in the right direction, and I think that's something I want to take into account and to see what can I do to help to steer it in a slightly different direction, so as in maybe to use my skills or my interests within graphic design to steer certain political stance that I would have into a direction that I think everyone would benefit, would go towards that, and not just single individuals, which is I think where we're heading now, sadly. So yeah, maybe a bit more political action, and yeah,
totally. Thank you so much, Lorenz. It's been really great talking to you today, and keep creating great things that we can put up on our reference walls.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you and getting the space to share some ideas and stories.
Thanks for listening to Design Signatures. Since this is Fedrigoni's podcast with a beautiful printed companion publication called Best of Publishing.
It's made up of 3 parts: Read Me, which showcases the work of the talented guests on this podcast; Choose Me, a fan swatch sorted by how the paper is used rather than the product type; and Footnotes, a practical guide to the art of publishing.
We hope this toolkit and podcast inspire you. Want to learn more? Just reach out. Design Signatures is brought to you by Fedrigoni in collaboration with TM.
We'll be sharing more stories about design, creativity, special paper and beyond.
Follow us on Instagram and visit the Fedrigoni Special Papers website for updates.
Thanks for listening, and catch you in the next episode.